let's talk some more about Lorcana. Hey everybody, it's Alan here, coming back with another Lorcana deck review and some gameplay. Since the launch of the Rise of Floodborn, the metagame of Lorcana has shifted considerably, and I've got a couple of ideas that I want to share with you about some decks that I've seen played, been playing, been testing out. This one is Ruby and Amethyst, and I affectionately refer to it as Bounce House, and you'll see why here in a second. Okay, so here is the deck in full. Let's break down these cards and why I've made these selections. Starting with our one-cost cards, we have Olaf, Friendly Snowman, and Minnie Mouse, Always Classy. The reason these two are selected is we need some early game walls or late game ink, because both of these are inkable, of course, to help either stop aggressive decks from absolutely rolling over you or running out of ink in the late game. What's even more important about these two is they are 1 attack or 1 power and 3 defense. What's running around a lot in Steel right now is Grab Your Swords and Let the Storm Rage On, both of which deal 2 damage. One, of course, dealing 2 damage across the board, which is Grab Your Swords, and Let the Storm Rage On dealing 2 damage to a singular target. Having 3 defense is super impactful because that prevents that card from being a 1-for-1 trade. They'll have to use more resources to end up trading out these low-cost cards, and that's super important, especially when you have some Steel decks running around, like Steel Song, which we'll be featuring here soon. And at the 2 cost, we have Madam Mim as a snake. I love the Sword in the Stone cards in this set. The reason that this is called Bounce House is because a lot of the focus of this deck is to return cards back to your hand, or bounce them. When you see the text, return another chosen character of yours to your hand, that is bouncing. So Madam Mim comes into play, and unless you bounce something or return something back to your hand, she is then banished. So this is a huge value when we get later in the game with things like Merlin, Rabbit, or Merlin the Goat. All of the Merlin cards have effects when they come into play and when they leave play, and almost all of the Madam Mim cards have an effect that when something comes into play, it is either banished unless something is bounced or returned to your hand. So it's a really neat synergy there. So we have Madam Mim Snake, and then you have LeFou Instigator. This is a great card when you want to ready one of your characters, so that way you don't have it exerted and at the risk of being challenged by your opponent in the next turn. It's also a good bit of ink later on in the game. I think LeFou Instigator is incredibly situational, but I've found him valuable in most of the games that I have played with this deck. Then you have Arthur, Wizard's Apprentice. This card is one of the engines of this deck. I think it is incredibly helpful when in play, and it is something that needs to be removed by your opponent when it enters play as well. It reads, whenever this character quests, you may return another chosen character of yours to your hand to gain 2 lore. So you quest for 1 lore. If you have another character in play, you can return that character to your hand and gain an additional 2 lore. And if you have cards like Merlin the Goat or Merlin the Rabbit on the field in front of you, there are additional effects that we'll be talking about a little bit later. Overall, just a great sort of combo engine for this deck. Then you have Madam Mim the Fox, which again, like all Madam Mim cards, when Madam Mim the Fox enters the play, you must return a character of yours to your hand or this card will be banished. So another bounce card. And then it has Rush. With 4 power and 3 defense, it is I look at this card as removal. I use her less for questing and more for how can I get this threat that my opponent has on the field that is exerted off the board. Next at the 3-drop slot, we have Maleficent Sorceress. This is a solid card. It's been a solid card from set 1. When this card comes into play, you may draw a card. If you want to bounce Maleficent Sorceress back to your hand, you can play her again and keep drawing more cards. I think she is a great one and done or a great value add to be bounced to your hand. Then you have Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer. I love the love that Minnie Mouse has gotten. That's unrelated, I just like it. This card has evasive, meaning only characters with evasive can challenge this card, and it quests for 2 lore at the 3-drop slot. I think that's incredibly powerful. Also the fact that it has 3 defense, huge when the aforementioned removal we have from Steel is running around. Next we have Merlin Goat. Another one of the main engines and main win conditions of this deck is Merlin Goat. When you play this character and when it leaves play, gain 1 lore. In combination with any of the Madam Mims that we have seen in this deck, or specifically with Arthur Wizard's Apprentice, that is just a way to rack up a lot of lore very quickly. Also, if it's removed from play, you gain another lore. So you benefit when this card enters play and when it leaves play, regardless of the means by which it leaves play. It's just a very powerful card, and the fact that it is an uncommon is wild to me. Next, we have Merlin Rabbit. Now, the difference between Merlin the Goat and Merlin the Rabbit here are a couple of things. Mainly, of course, Merlin the Goat is inkable, Merlin Rabbit is not. Merlin Rabbit, when it enters play, you may draw a card, and when it leaves play, you may draw a card. So this is another one of those, I am happy if I have this card coming into play or leaving play, regardless of how it's doing so, with any of the aforementioned bounce engines that are in this deck. Next, we have Madam Mim, Rival of Merlin. Now, this is a card slot that I've sort of been testing and playing around with. I think it might be something that I change in the future, but for what she is, I think it is an interesting card to consider. Her ability is you exert or tap the character and are able to play a character that costs 4 ink or less for free. They gain rush, and then at the end of the turn, you can banish them. So rushing means that they can challenge another character in play, and at the end of the turn, you banish them. In combination with things like Merlin Goat or Merlin Rabbit, I think it's very, very powerful, and it's a mechanism to get those cards in for free for either a 2 lore swing in your direction or 2 cards that you can draw very quickly. Another 5-drop is Maui Hero to All. This is just a great removal card. Maui Hero to All with 6 power, 5 defense. With rush, it can't quest, it's reckless. It's just great removal, especially when your opponent, and we get late game, your opponent is playing larger threats that have more defense. Maui is a great way to remove those threats from play. Threats like you see in this deck, like Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. But next to the 6-drop slot, one of my favorite cards in this set is Lady Tremaine. And on coming into play, you ask your opponent, please banish one of your characters. Your opponent has to choose. If there's only one character in play, that choice is easy. If there are many characters in play, that choice might get a little bit more difficult. But I think it's a great bit of removal. I think it is fun flavor-wise in terms of the story that happens around Lady Tremaine. Just a very, very good card. And the last of the characters, but certainly not least, is Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. It is still good for all the same reasons it was good in Chapter 1. Enters play, banish a character of your choice, and then it can quest for 2 lore. It also has 7 power and 5 defense, which makes it a pretty handy tool in combat as well. Next, moving on to songs. At the 2-drop slot, we have Teeth and Ambitions. This deals 2 damage to one of your characters in order to deal 2 damage to an opposing character. Notice how the majority of our characters have 3 defense. There are some exceptions, but the majority of our characters have 3 defense at that sort of low ink cost area. Teeth and Ambitions is a great way to remove your opposing characters while still having enough defense to keep your characters in play. Next is Friends from the Other Side, still one of the most solid card draw cards in the game right now. 3 cost, draw 2 cards. Again, you can have one of your 3 cost characters sing this song to play this for free and draw 2 cards. Incredibly powerful. And the last of the songs is Be Prepared. There are 3 of them in this deck. You can see this deck is fairly character driven, so I don't run all 4 of the Be Prepared. I might actually have to bring in a 4th one depending on what happens with that Madam Mim Rival of Merlin slot right now. But for now, I'm only running 3 Be Prepared. I'm not missing the 4th yet. We'll see how the metagame progresses. And the last card in the deck brings us some inevitability, and that is the Sorcerer's Spellbook, which for 1 ink, you exert this item and you gain 1 lore. Yeah, that's it. It's pretty powerful. It gives you reach and it gives you inevitability unless your opponent has specific and dedicated item removal in their deck, which right now, it's pretty rare to exist in a lot of opponents' decks. So I think it's a really solid addition. Now, this is the deck, this is Bounce House. Let's take it on a test drive. Okay, we are in our first game and we are going first. With this hand, I'm not going to be keeping this hand, I think, in any way, shape, or form. We're probably going to send all of these cards back, and here's why. We've got a lot of high-cost cards. It's nice to have Merlin Goat, it's nice to have Madam Mim. I don't think I want any of these high-drop cards right now, or these high-ink cost cards right now. I'm going to keep 1 Teeth and Ambitions, and then I'm going to aggressively mulligan my deck. The hope here is that we draw into some lower cost cards. It looks like we didn't, and we're going first, which is putting us a bit on the back foot here, if I'm being honest. This might be a tough game to win just based upon the hand here. We'll see what our opponent's playing, but we're going to start by inking Maleficent because there's no way we're going to get to that card right now and passing the turn. This probably tells our opponent that we are playing a control deck. We are not. They're playing Steel, and they just inked the Beast Tragic Hero. It looks like they're playing a version of Steel, probably Steel Song, the new updated one, which is Steel and Amber with a lot of songs in it, hence the name Steel Song. I think here we are going to ink Madam Mim. That feels pretty gimmicky. I don't think we're going to get to it. We're going to play our Olaf, and we're going to pass the turn. The plan here is to be able to use Teeth and Ambitions next turn to get rid of Cinderella. Cinderella really is one of the bigger threats. At 2 cost, they can't play any actions like Smash outright that would take care of Olaf. That's fine by me. They're inking World's Greatest Criminal Mind, another really good song from the set. We'll have to take the Steel Song for a ride here so you can see exactly what that's like. Oh, they are playing incredibly aggressively with a lot of 1-cost cards. 2 Stitches coming out, and we're questing with Cinderella. Okay, interesting. Here's what I would like to do. We are going to use Teeth and Ambition to deal 2 damage to Olaf and deal 2 damage to Cinderella. Cinderella really is the biggest threat here. We're going to keep Olaf as is here, and we are going to ink. This is a tough question here. I know that they are going to have probably Rockstar Stitch, so I need to keep Maui. The question is, though, what do we ink? Ultimately, I think I need to ink LeFou because either of the Madam Mims are higher value to return a damaged Olaf to my hand, or I can play a Maleficent next turn. I actually don't think I'll be playing Maleficent next turn. The question becomes, do I have 4 ink to play both LeFou and Madam Mim next turn? I don't think that's the right play either. I think we ink LeFou, we leave this guy, Olaf, back, and we pass the turn. They are really considering the next action. Okay, they are inking a Rockstar Stitch, which is interesting. They're going to play an Aerial and search for a song. Let's find out what they're going to grab here. It looks like they didn't get any song, which is unfortunate for them. Now, this is one of those times where they're questing pretty aggressively, and I know that I'm going to need some assistance in order to manage this in the long term. The question is, do I believe that they have a grab your swords in hand? I would be hard-pressed to think otherwise. They have 3 cards in hand. I think my best course of action is to quest with Olaf, play this. The debate right now is, are these stitches worth me trying to remove them from play? I think the answer is no. They might have another Rockstar Stitch in hand. In fact, I think it's pretty likely given that they inked one. So do I want to play a character with Rush right now? I don't think so. I think I want to play this Madam Mim, send Olaf back to my hand. I'm not going to replay Olaf. I'm going to use him as ink and continue to stay on curve, and then I'm going to pass the turn. Now, the reason that I did that is because if I send Madam Mim, the fox, in and I try to challenge either of these stitches, then that Madam Mim will only have 1 health remaining or 1 defense remaining. And if they play something like a Grab Your Swords with Aerial, because they have Aerial and Aerial can sing Grab Your Swords, Sleepy's Flute, then it would be very, very tough for me. Okay, so Sleepy's Flute gives them an inevitability. This is going to be tough for me because that's going to be, they can exert this, and if they sing a song, they gain a lore. They're already ahead. They have inevitability. They have three characters in play. This is looking pretty tough for me. This is a matchup in this most recent edition of a Steel Song with Sleepy's Flute. That's very, very tough, especially when they have 2 Sleepy's Flute. That means if they have a song in hand, which they almost always do, then they're going to be gaining lore, 2 lore every turn. Okay, this game looking pretty tough for me, folks. I'm not going to lie to you, but let's see if we can find our way out of it, shall we? I think priority 1 is getting rid of Aerial. So we are going to say, we're going to ink Minnie Mouse, challenge Aerial with Madam Mim, play Madam Mim, sending the Madam Mim back to my hand, challenging Stitch, and then I'm going to play this Madam Mim and send my other Madam Mim back to my hand. We're just going to keep bouncing and cycling those guys out, so that way I always have these Madam Mims in my hand for removal. They are going to be gaining 3 lore up to 10. This is looking very tough for me if I don't find cards that can help quest. Having the whole new worlds is also pretty rough to deal with, just because I have no concept of, all right, they're going to be gaining 2 lore. They sang Let the Storm Rage On, damaged my Madam Mim for 2. Inking Benja, they have 2 ink still, playing the Queen. Interesting. And then they have to quest here, right? There's no way they don't quest. That's what I thought. Okay, now. The questions continue. I think I lose in a race, but I think I have to try. So I think the play is I quest here because they're gaining 2 every turn. That's a 5-turn clock if they have songs. And I don't know if there's a way for me to ramp it that quickly. I'm going to play Madam Mim, send it back to my hand, take out this Stitch. I have 2 cards in hand. I'm going to play this Madam Mim, and then I think I need to get aggressive here. I'm going to play Minnie Mouse Evasive Surfer because it is questing for 2, which is going to help me sort of speed up my clock, and I'm just going to leave this Madam Mim out to effectively be sort of removed. Inking a Big Cindy. What I believe is happening is they are trying desperately. Oh, interesting. They're trying desperately to. Oh, they didn't sing a song, but they thought they did because they played Big Tinkerbell. That's funny. That's very, very funny to me. Okay, so let's sit and think. They cannot challenge Minnie Mouse. We know that. I'm going to quest for 2. I'm going to play LeFou. I'm going to untap my Minnie Mouse here. I'm going to have her sing Friends from the Other Side to draw 2 cards. Interesting. I believe the play here is to play this Sorcerer's Spellbook and add another lore here to 5, and that will be my turn. I would be shocked if they didn't have a Grab Your Swords here. Playing a Benja, destroying my Sorcerer's Spellbook. Looks like folks are running Benja now. Benja at the 3-drop slot can be inked, and you choose an item to banish. Now the question is, Strength of a Raging Fire. They will use Strength of a Raging Fire to take out my Minnie Mouse, and then they will gain 2, and then we'll gain 5 lore this turn. Yeah, this is looking very, very tough for me. I really don't know if I have a way out of this, if I'm being honest. But what we're going to do is we're going to quest with LeFou. I think we ink this Madam Mim at the 5-drop slot because she's the least valuable thing in my hand right now, and we be prepared, and we banish all characters. We're still on a 2-turn clock. It's not looking solid, but we're gonna see what we can get here. Playing an Aerial to see what song they get to guarantee that they have a song in hand for Sleepy's Flute. It does say that they reveal the song, right? You may reveal. It looks like they did not reveal a song, which is interesting, meaning they probably already have one in their hand, which they do. Strength of a Raging Fire. They're doing it to their own Aerial so that they can quest for 2. Now, I have to win this turn, and I don't think I will. Let's see what we get with this Maleficent. We get another Maleficent. That's absolutely unhelpful. Here, we'll just use this Sorcerer's Spellbook. I'm not going to concede. I'm going to let them win because that takes the fun out of it if they don't get the opportunity to actually win and pass the turn back. This is a slower hand that I had. I would have loved to have a faster hand. They can, if they have 0 to hero. They're going to quest twice. They might show a little bit of bad manners here, honestly. Okay, no, they're doing just fine. And they're going to Sleepy's Flute. Good for them. They won. This is a very strong deck. All right, we took the first loss. Let's see if we can get a win in the second time. Okay, back with another game. We are going second. Oh, goodness gracious. Look at all of the cards that I don't want to have in my hand right now. We'll keep these 2, Maleficent and a Madam Mim. Ooh, goodness gracious. Okay, they're playing what looks to be a control deck, maybe? They have a Mickey Mouse that's 8 cost. They also have this Minnie Mouse here. It looks like this is going to be another version of this sort of bouncy deck. We're going to put Maleficent into the Inkwell and pass the turn. This is going to be a pretty hard one to win. Mother Gothel. That's interesting. I've not seen that. Mother Gothel comes in with 3 damage. 3. Ooh. Okay. I'm intrigued by this deck. I've not seen something like this before. We are going to... goodness gracious. We're going to ink this Madam Mim and pass the turn. What I'm starting to realize is that this Madam Mim at the 5 cost, I'd rather be almost anything else, and I'm looking to lower the curve a little bit more. So this is a Ruby and Amber deck, and they chose to not quest there. That's intriguing to me. We're going to play this Madam Mim, put that into the Inkwell, and then play a Maleficent and draw a card. Passing the turn. Another Mother Gothel goes into the Inkwell for them. That's 2 Mother Gothels that I've seen in the Inkwell. The third one is in play. They're then going to play a Rapunzel. It's the Mother Gothel and Rapunzel combo so they can draw 3 cards. Great combo. Great use of those cards. Okay, so they now have 2... Okay, so they can quest for 1, 2, 3, 4 every turn. Mother Gothel's 3 cost. What do I want to do here? I think I want to draw 2. Interesting. And I want to make sure that this card is not taken. So I'm going to play I'm going to put a Minnie Mouse into my Inkwell. I'm going to play a LeFou to ready my Maleficent. And then... this is the question here. That might have been a misplay. The play might have been to play a Madam Mim, this 2-cost Madam Mim, to send Maleficent back to my hand so I could have her to draw next turn. Or, it's very likely, I don't want to swing into this Mother Gothel unless I have the answer to actually remove it. I think the play here is we play an Olaf, and then we pass the turn. Just putting some more cards on the board to give myself more targets to actually bounce characters. I think that's the play as opposed to trying to remove any of their characters right now. It doesn't feel like that would be a lot of value to me. Dinner Bell is very interesting. It reads, pay 2 ink, exert the card, draw cards equal to the damage on a chosen character of yours, and then banish them. Very interesting, meaning that they're looking to have their characters banished. They are not questing, which I find very interesting. Again, I think we friends from the other side with Maleficent, which means we're going to go ahead and use that. Okay, great. Now, we have 5 ink. I think that this Madam Mim will likely go into play to put this Maleficent back into my hand. I then think that we will ink Olaf and play Maleficent again to draw another card. We found a Merlin goat, and we pass the turn. I'm not in a position where I want to quest or exert my characters and give my opponent the opportunity to damage their characters so that they can draw cards, either through Rapunzel and their healing or through Dinner Bell. What I would like to do, however, is try to force their hand into using their removal. For example, if they use something like a Be Prepared, I think genuinely probably has more value for me than them. I have a lot of cards in play, but I don't have a lot of high quest value right now. Okay, they've used Teeth and Ambitions. They're going to banish their Minnie Mouse and draw 2 cards. Now that I'm fine with. I'm forcing them to use their cards in ink in a way that is not necessarily advantageous. I have 5 ink, and I must think about what I want to do here. I believe that the correct play here is to play a Merlin to gain a lore. I also think that the next correct play is to ink. I don't want to ink Minnie Mouse because with evasive, it means that I have the opportunity to quest uninhibited. I'm putting this Merlin out here to try to force some action on their part. I also want to keep Maui in hand because Maui's removal. I think I ink the higher cost Madam Mim, because for 3 mana, I'd probably rather play the Minnie Mouse. And then I'm going to bounce LeFou back to my hand, so that way if I ever want to quest in the future, I have LeFou to help me by unexerting that character. This is very likely. Oh, it's a Lantern. Interesting. A Lantern and a Maui. Very, very intriguing. Okay, let's think, shall we? I think that what we do here is we quest with Merlin, we play a LeFou to unexert the Merlin, and then we play Lorekeeper Spellbook and add 1 lore. I also think that the play there is to put a Maui into the Inkwell to go to 7 ink. We then pass the turn. I'm willing to bet they're probably pretty frustrated that I'm not giving them the chance to use their dinner bell very much. I'm wondering what high cost character other than Maleficent they have that's going to help get rid of the fact that we've just got a whole lot going on. Okay, they're questing with Mother Gothel, and they're questing with Rapunzel. Then they're going to be, then they be prepared. That was the play that I was anticipating. I was thinking that was going to happen a lot earlier if I'm being honest. Okay, we play a Minnie Mouse with Evasive, and we play an Arthur, and then we add 1 lore to make it even. Arthur's sitting here threatening that I can do something, that I can gain lore, and they're gonna have to choose which one they remove. Either the Evasive character that can always add 2 to play, or Arthur. This is a Maleficent more than likely. And we're gonna figure out, yep, and they go for Arthur. I think that's genuinely probably the smartest play that they could make in that turn. We quest for 2, because that's Evasive. They can't do anything about it unless they have a Mickey Mouse. We saw that they had a Mickey Mouse before, but that's okay. We're going to play a, we play a Merlin, and we draw a card. We got another Sorcerer's Spellbook. I think we threaten a little bit with Sorcerer's Spellbook, and probably, as much as I hate it, probably gonna put Maleficent there into the Inkwell so that I can use one of my spellbooks to go up to 8. Lore, that means potentially I can have 4 lore in my hand every, later Tremaine is coming into play. I'm gonna sacrifice Merlin to draw another card. Fine by me. Questing for 2. It means they probably have another little bit of removal in their hand. Okay, that's fine by me. Now, what is the play? He asks himself. We play Maui. We remove Maleficent from play. We quest for 2 with Minnie Mouse. I think we then do 2 Sorcerer Spellbooks to go up to 12, and then we play an Olaf. So that way, if there is another Lady Tremaine that is played, I can choose to sacrifice my Olaf, and we pass the turn. Nothing going into the Inkwell right now. I need to save those cards that I have in hand. The only card that I'd be playing for 9, and there it is, another Lady Tremaine. We're gonna sacrifice the Olaf. A Maui, and then for 4, I wonder what we're going to do here. That's intriguing to me. Okay, yeah, the only thing that I have for 9 is Maleficent Dragon. So I don't know what else could be in their hand right now. They're questing for 4. I am also going to be questing for 4 every turn, or adding 4 lore every turn rather. I think this is the best play I can make, because what I'm doing is I'm effectively saying I have this I can win the game next turn unless they have another big piece of removal. It's very likely that they do, but this allows me to win the game. I can also bring out Maleficent and have that to banish any character that comes into play should they choose to use a Be Prepared, which is the main solution that they need to have right now, is Be Prepared. Putting in a Stitch, they're going to draw a card because that Stitch, they conceded the game. All right, with that, they concede the game. They just couldn't find their removal in their final draws, and the spellbooks were going to give me that inevitability over time. That was a very good game, a lot of back and forth. Well, that was a fun representation of an Amethyst and Ruby deck. Again, the bounce deck that allows you to gain lore through sending characters back to hand, through always giving yourself that bit of removal. I'm sure that there were some misplays, but my main takeaway from that is that this deck is not finalized or polished. I think that the Madam M rival of Merlin's have to go from the deck. I would rather have more early game threats than that. I would also be interested in looking at the numbers of things like Madam M's Snake or Minnie Mouse Stylish Surfer, as great as they are, just to have more early game threats. Considering something like a Pinocchio, or maybe just removing the 2 Madam M rival of Merlin and adding into Pinocchio. That 2-drop slot, granted they can't be inked, but I think in a certain point there's a higher value. This deck is going to take some tinkering. I don't think it's tuned to be in the perfect spot where it needs to be. It's sort of a mid-range deck that feels like it's too control-y, but a fun deck to play and a great concept. I'm curious as to your thoughts as well. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what decks you're playing. Let me know if this deck is of any interest to you. But until the next time, friends, thank you so much. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought. Tell me what you're playing in Lorcana right now. But just know that I appreciate you and thank you for hanging out with me. But until next time, everybody, bye-bye.